Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, like a reverse Bloody Mary, we risk sending the live-action Pokemon show back to hell by invoking its name. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. We've got a good show for you today. We are going to be talking about the news from the week, including a possible fix to Joy-Con drift. And then on Thursday, it's part 2 of determining how to bring every Zelda game into the modern era. But Mark, in the meantime, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I thought it was funny that before we got started, you were adjusting your light a little bit. I'm trying to always get like the right angles on my FaceTime when we are doing this remotely. And Patrick, I just appreciate almost 500 episodes in, and we're still trying to, make each other happy.
I mean, this is what you really need. This is what you need to do in all relationships.
Yep.
But podcasting relationships especially, it's easy to like fall into a comfortable routine and take the other person for granted. And you realize what you're doing is if you're not respecting the other person, you're not respecting yourself.
It's so true. It's so true.
Mark, it's good to see you. I've been traveling this weekend. It's nice to be back in LA, where it rained last night. Look, I know we're past the point of doing weather reports, but it's July in Los Angeles, and it rained last night.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this too much because, as you said, Weather Report is not a feature of this show anymore. Believe it or not, if you have joined this show recently, we used to prominently talk about the weather in LA and other places on a weekly basis, but we don't do that anymore. I will say, however, that I saw today that because of this tiny bit of rain, it is now the third wettest July ever in LA. I'm not kidding.
I mean, I love it. We were staring down the barrel of, and again, we are not bringing back a weather report. This is not us doing the weather report section. But we were headed into like a drought, and we probably still are. That is, just going to be catastrophic for the entire West Coast, but definitely for Southern California. Just that tiny little bit of rain. I saw running water on my bike ride to work today. So, I couldn't be happier.
Patrick, do you think that, for our 433rd episode, we did an entire episode devoted to 433s. Do you think for our 500th episode, that is the time to bring back guest weather, and we just read the weather from everywhere that listeners send in?
Ooh, tough sell. I mean, maybe if there is a positive response to that right here and now, and I mean emails that we get before we record Thursday's episode, then we'll think about it.
Maybe we should start a Patreon just to make that a Patreon exclusive episode.
Oh, I mean, if someone's gonna pay for it, I'll do an all weather podcast. Mark, speaking of something else that you would have to pay me to do, the Sonic Forces borrowing program, would you like to be a part of it? You can borrow my copy of Sonic Forces for the Nintendo Switch. All you got to do is email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com and send us a mailing address where we can send you my copy of this game for you to play as long as you want. And then you send it back. I pay for postage both ways. There are no other rules. There's one caveat, I suppose, is that you may get my copy of Untitled Goose Game. There is a goose that lives inside a Sonic Forces box, and it goosed its way in to the Sonic Forces borrowing program. That may be a thing that happens, but you just proceed as always. Play it for as long as you want. Send it back. It is the perfect borrowing program.
The other thing you can do is leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate it so much. It is a great way to help other people find the show and keep the show growing. We check the US Apple Podcast Store, and so if you leave a review there, we'll give you a shout out on the show. If you leave a review anywhere else or favorite us, leave us 5 stars, whatever you do on your podcatcher, send us an email, hit us up on Twitter. We'd love to give you a shout out on the show.
Yeah, it makes us feel good.
Yeah, and you can't put a price on that.
No, certainly you and I can't put a price on that. All right, Mark, let's do it. Let's get into what we've been playing this week. Before we, we have both been playing the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, but I gotta shout out listener Lewis, who made good on his promise to send me the steelbook case
Whoa!
for Skyward Sword HD. So it's got like this like crazy
That is
graphic of
sweet.
like Link holding the sword in front of like Zelda and Groose, and like you got Ghirahim and Fi on there. It's really dope. I'm excited for the time when I'm also enjoying playing the game, but I'm excited for the time when I can take the cartridge out and pop it into the little steelbook case and put it up on my shelf. It's very handsome.
The steelbook case for the Switch they're always like so fun for whatever reason, because they're like fun sized.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and the back of it is just the Hylian shield and the Skyward Sword, nay Master Sword. And so yeah, it's dope. I'm really happy that that you sent this thing, Lewis. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Ghirahim, is that the name of like the kind of villain character that
Yes.
Okay. So I am not too much further into the game. I beat the first temple, and so everything I said about the beginning of the game is still true. I really enjoyed like the characters. I think the music is amazing, all of that. Um I'm not entirely sold on the combat. It's a little too like
Right.
stop and go for me, where it's like, okay, every single enemy I encounter, no matter how small, I have to like stop and defeat it, because you can't just the option is either to just like run by it, which sometimes I do, but there's no real good way to just like quickly take care of an enemy. Every enemy encounter requires a certain amount of just like doing it, which is
Yeah,
is
a little
not
bit of
always that
a
fun.
struggle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was finding that too, as so I am just up to the boss fight at the end of the forest temple,
Mm-hmm.
which is against Ghirahim, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He's fighting you barehanded for a little bit and then pulls out a sword. But spoilers for the end of the forest temple, I guess. But what was it? Oh, that I discovered that you can. There are sometimes when you're going up against those like moblins or bokoblins or whatever they are with clubs, where you can just shoot them with a slingshot and they get like stunned, and then you just do a spin
Oh,
attack. And then just finish them off that way. And it's like it was a nice way to turn like a sort of tedious combat encounter. Like it was cool to have gotten a new tool that like unlocked that, like made it easier, made it so I could just run past him instead of engaging in the kind of tricky, sticky combat puzzle of fighting them.
Speaking of like finding that new thing to unlock, I really liked the beetle. I think that's
The
like a
beetle
really
rules, yeah,
that's
it's
that's a
fun.
really fun one, and it's fun to control in using motion controls. Like have it like fly around,
Yeah.
and you can use it to solve puzzles or to find like secret areas and gather rupees. Like I thought that was a really fun mechanic. It doesn't really factor into the boss battle at all, which I thought was interesting. And so it makes me wonder, like, if that's kind of my expectation when I get an item in a dungeon, is that I'll use it in the boss battle or something like that. But I don't think it has any utility in the boss battle here, which I didn't mind at all. I'm just interested to see like like how else I'll use it out in the world once I can run around.
Yeah, I mean it is interesting because like there are so many different like dimensions to just regular old swordplay in the game, which at once makes a regular combat encounter feel like kind of overwhelmingly tedious. But like for a boss battle, or like there's a are they Skullflos, the skeleton like warriors? There's one of those in there that has two swords, and like he holds them in a certain way that you have to like swing in the only direction that you'd be able to hit him. So sometimes it's like parallel lines, horizontal, and you have to like slash right through the middle. Sometimes he holds them vertical, and you have to slash up and down. Sometimes he's holding them at like an L shape, and so you have to go for like a diagonal that he's not holding a sword at. And something like that is very cool. And like fighting Ghirahim is like, it's fun to have to engage with it that specifically for what feels like an event, and
Yeah,
not just like a random encounter.
yeah, it was almost like retraining myself a little bit in having to use motion controls that way where it is deliberate. Um, it has been a long time since I've played Twilight Princess on the Wii, but I immediately went into Twilight Princess mode where I was just waggling. I would just shake
Yeah,
it to
yeah.
get Link to swing a sword, and that doesn't work in this game. I also thought it was like once I figured out that I was supposed to like swing the sword around in a circle to get the eyeballs.
Those eyeballs, yeah.
Yeah, to like follow it, and then it makes them dizzy, and then you can like solve puzzles that way. Like that was kind of cool. A little bit of diminishing returns, but
Yeah.
I think the ones that I didn't like were the spider enemies. I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah, they're tough.
But the thing with the motion controls is like directionally it's good or it's good enough, but the stabbing motion which you have to do to attack the like diamond on the spider's backside or on their bellies,
Yeah.
like doing the stabbing motion, I have found that the motion
Oh,
controls
really?
are not like very precise.
I've really enjoyed the precision of the thrusts. Like they almost feel more reliable to me than like anytime I try to do a straight horizontal swing, it comes out diagonal.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I think I like the stab, the jab, because it's kind of just the one option of it.
I also thus far have not been using the shield very much. Partly it's
Oh,
because like so the shields in this game, they decay over time, and you have a little indicator like a bar that shows the
yeah.
shield's health essentially, and as you use it it goes down, and then the shield breaks, or if you have the opportunity to like escape back up to Skyloft and you can get it repaired and then come back down. I feel like if I had that amiibo, I could be popping up to Skyloft all the time. But without the amiibo, getting to Skyloft and coming back is such a hassle that it's like, do you know what? I'm just not going to worry about it.
There is also a potion that restores
Oh
both
yeah,
your
that's
life
right.
and some of the shield strength too. Using the shield is actually very helpful because not only does it deflect an attack, but then like it leaves the enemy stunned for a moment. So like if you're having a tough time landing hits on someone, stunning them with the shield first is a helpful way to then like create that opening.
I have never played Skyward Sword before, and I remember the trailers showing off Ghirahim and that kind of stuff. But when I was playing it and you encounter him in the boss, I could not believe how queer coded this character
Oh,
is.
yes, yeah. And like I always have like a little bit of like mixed feelings about that cuz like I'm always excited for like the representation and I like seeing like a just like loudly queer character in the game. But it's also like I don't know, having that the sort of like hyper effeminate villain
Yeah.
is a little bit of a trope too. So I don't quite know how I feel about him yet. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about him either. I think I'm torn a little bit like you. Like one, you're like, oh, Ghirahim, like a queer icon. But on the other hand, his interaction with Link in the first boss fight when,
Yeah.
he like gets really close to him, and I don't know, there was something about it that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But just because I feel like I'm kind of tired of like the queer coded villain trope a little bit.
Yeah.
And it would
Yeah.
almost be a different thing if they were just straight up, if he was just straight up like, I'm gay, but he's not, right? Like,
Sure.
it's just the coding of it. And so it's like, okay, does that like, uh, so having that be presented like as a villain is just a little tiresome sometimes.
Yeah, well, and I think especially when it almost seems like his queerness is part of his villainy or like is part of what is threatening
What is
to Link.
threatening? Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
totally. Like appearing over Link's shoulder and like doing the Gene Simmons like tongue thing, while telling Link that he's gonna beat him within an inch of his life, is like okay. Now this what like I don't know like it doesn't make me feel good. However, when he like shrugs off that cape and you're like, all right, all right,
Yeah, he's definitely got a David Bowie thing going on. David
yeah.
Bowie, Tilda Swinton, for sure.
David Bowie equals Tilda Swinton. They're on the same. They're on the same level. Yeah. So I am enjoying this. It is a far slower experience. Both just in terms of like the actual gameplay and in terms of like how much I feel like I can play at any given time. Um, just because like you forget that like doing all this like gesture and like waggle controlling like is a more physically demanding experience. You're not doing Ring Fit Adventure, but like you play for 2 hours and you're like, okay, I'm like kind of done holding my arms up, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely less mindless than some of like other video games can be, because even like, grinding for rupees takes
Yeah.
significantly more effort. The other thing I have found with the motion controls is I have a really hard time getting it to register that I want to do like the skyward pose and charge up
Yeah.
my sword. Oh, but I will say the presentation of this game I continue to really enjoy. So there's like the part again, minor spoilers for the game, but so after the first dungeon, you kind of get a little bit of an exposition dump from Fee or Faye, the sword character, like the avatar for the sword. But she's telling you this and she's like kind of like skating on top of the water in this pond, and I just thought like the whole thing was kind of like joyful and fun. I love the music. I love the arrangement of the like Ballad of the Goddess or whatever it's called that they use prominently in this game. Like I think it's just really beautiful. So the presentation continues to kill it for me.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I there are some elements where like I almost wish that I wasn't playing this on a high def screen, because I do think that there are some of the like painterly elements of like the regular design of the world that would play better if they were a little bit blurred out. But there are some things like the way Girahim's magic works, where it's just like solid blocks of like black and white like diamond shapes that sort of like appear and vanish, and the whole like the fact that Fee clearly has something digital going on there. Like you're in a medieval world, but she's a computer from the future or space or something, and I love it. Like there are some really bold, really exciting choices in the way the game was originally designed, and the craft and art direction of the original game. And it's cool to see that in such high fidelity. But then there's sort of like the regular part of it that I feel like I'm missing the kind of Vaseline on the lens.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I totally agree about the music too. Like really cool arrangements of stuff, really atmospheric and fun.
It just feels like compared to Breath of the Wild or even
Mm.
something like Link's Awakening, it just feels like the most Zelda. Like Breath of the Wild, the music is very like deliberate and stark and only at certain
Yeah,
times. And this game is like wall to wall music. It has a ton of narrative. It's interesting to compare the two. I can totally understand, and maybe the further I get into it, I can see how this game could be frustrating to play, and so that's why I'm aiming to do it just a little bit at a time. But it feels like maximalist Zelda. Like it feels like the
yeah.
most Zelda, and then they had to, in a lot of ways, and then they had to like they chose to pull back from that for Breath of the Wild.
It's also like it's interesting to think of it as the like the primordial Zelda too, right? Because like it is intentionally like tracing itself back to before Ganon, and before like the Master Sword is a thing, right? Like all of the pieces that we're seeing now are sort of like leading up to what we know as Zelda. So like I agree, like having a maximalist Zelda approach feels right for both like an accurate description of what the gameplay is, but also what like these sort of story elements of it are too.
And I think because it's been so long since I've had like a 3D Zelda in the traditional Zelda style, I'm enjoying like going back to that a little bit. It feels like a fun safety blanket.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But I do also want to like just kind of get out and like yeah, I think it is nice that we are both reacting this way. But I don't know that there's another universe where you and I could have both been like turned off by the sort of like um inconveniences of Skyward Sword HD, or just one of us was. And I'm thankful that we're on the same page. But I could totally see a universe where that wasn't the case, and we're like, nah, I don't know, I'm annoyed by it, and just not playing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, like I'm only like 5 hours in, and so there's a lot of game to go. And so the
Yeah,
things that right now are like on the edges of it, but don't occur off. Like I don't think we've talked about dowsing. Um,
yeah, let's do
a-
it. Let's get into
and
dowsing.
leading up to the dungeon, it's like a big like a good hour of the game at least is kind of like based around it, and essentially it's where you use your sword almost like a radar or like one of those like sticks that are supposed to find water, and
A
you're
dowsing
trying
rod.
a dowsing rod, and you're trying to locate a character. And it's awful. It's not fun at all. And so if it features prominently, I'm not excited for that.
Can I tell you that I used dowsing to find the first of those kiwis?
Oh yeah, I love those
Kiwi?
guys.
Yeah, I used one to find the first one of them, and then the other two I was like, I'm just gonna run around.
Yeah, I don't know that it was any better. I guess the one time that I found it semi helpful when I was trying to locate one of them. Be,
Mhm.
um, because I couldn't figure out how I was supposed to get up to that platform or like where it was located, but I could use the dowsing feature to figure out like generally where it
Yeah.
was, and then I used the badge on the map to mark it so that way it had like a pillar of light, and then I could just work
Oh,
my way. Like
smart.
it was just like, oh, okay, I've got to figure out how to get to this area specifically.
So that's good. We've been enjoying Skyward Sword HD, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about it for weeks to come. Mark, is this the point in the show where we have to address the fact that my predictions of when we would find out more about Zelda 3D HD remakes, the time has come and gone, and we learned nothing?
Oh, Patrick, I didn't want to have to bring it up.
Well, it's too late.
I was just
I
gonna
already did.
I was just gonna let it slide. I didn't want to be the one to open this wound.
I mean, look, I got to take the L, right? Because like I said it with such confidence, and the fact that it is not what happened, I just got to own it. And next time I'll predict something better.
Well, it's a little bit of bad news for all of us because, when your predictions were spot on, then you could say something crazy. And I was like, yes, absolutely. I can't believe that's going to happen. That's amazing. Mother 3 is finally
Yeah,
going to be localized. But now that I
I
know that
would
you're
never say
fallible,
that.
now that I know that you're fallible, right? It's like a game
Yeah.
changer. Everything has a little bit of skepticism.
Well, here's something you can trust. I have also been playing Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS. I mentioned last week that I had been playing it a little bit, and then was like, no, I wanna put this aside until I can get to my Metroid amiibo, scan it in, and play the game in fusion mode, which is, as far as I can tell, just the hard mode, possibly an even harder version of the hard mode. Plus, your color palette is changed to look like the fusion suit from Metroid Fusion. Um, and last week when we talked about it, I said that I was not happy with how difficult it made the game because, you can get one-shotted by an enemy even when you've got like two full energy tanks. Um, and I have since embraced this chaos, Mark. And I have gotten much deeper into the game. I'm into the I'm almost done killing Metroids for like the third set of like Metroid things. So I've probably beaten like 10 or 12 at this point, out of the 40 that are in the game. And like it is brutal. It is super tough. You have to learn and just know all of the Metroid patterns. Like there's no messing it up. Like honestly, any Metroid like mini boss that you fight is going to kill you in two shots. It doesn't matter how much health you have. Or maybe it does, and you have enough health that it can kill you in one. But I'm just leaning into it. I am welcoming the punishment, and just kind of slowly making my way through this game again. And I still really like it.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear that you have like gone past whatever wall it was, and then you're just like,
Hmm.
no, I'm embracing the pain.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just gotta embrace the pain. Sometimes all life has to serve to you is pain, and you're like, okay.
And in playing a Metroid game, not the worst way for that to happen.
No, absolutely, it's true. I'm perfectly well fed. I do not fear for my life. All these things are great. All right, Mark, that's what we've been playing this week. Let's get into the new releases and what we might be playing next week.
Today, Tuesday, July 27th, Samurai Warriors 5 is released for Switch, but also Neo: The World Ends With You is released for Switch, and the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles plus Ace Attorney True Turnabout Collection, which bundles Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney Trilogy, and the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. It's a banner day. I am very excited for the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, and the reviews for Neo: The World's End With You have been generally positive. which is fun because it feels like this is one of those projects that could have turned out poorly.
Yeah, and also just like one of the games that like since its original release was hailed so highly, right, as a super fun and engaging, unique, stylized and then stylistic game. But like every re-release since then, and like everything about like sort of like previews of Neo: The World Ends With You have been like kind of middling to like, this isn't what made the original special. So yeah, it is kind of exciting. I need to really like dig in and read some reviews. I saw that Imran Khan over on Fanbyte had reviewed it, and Rebecca Valentine on IGN. So like those are both reviews I want to like get back to and to actually see what they say about it. But this is probably one that I will be interested in picking up. I don't know right away. I got that Skyward Sword and I got that Metroid Samus Returns that I want to get through first. But yeah, it looks neat.
Yeah, it just feels it must be really daunting to take like to try to create a sequel to a cult classic like the original World Ends With You.
Yeah.
Because the alchemy of that game is like so specific and it's been so long, so to try to reinvent it and make it a little more modern, yeah, it just feels like a very daunting task. And so I'm always impressed when something like that comes together and seemingly comes together well. Similar to you, I'm very much looking forward to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I don't think I'm going to pick it up now. Think I'm going to wish list it and either wait for a sale or when I just have a little bit of a drought. I also have Skyward Sword HD, which I feel dedicated to get through, and I have promised everyone that I am going to at some point play Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch, and I refuse to be distracted away from it other than Skyward Sword HD. And so I have to do it for us, Patrick, and I'm going to play that game, and I can't let the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles get in the way.
But also like if you want to play the great, I mean, here's the thing: we don't have really, honestly, that much time to play games in our lives, right? But like, I don't know, we're getting close to, September's like a month and a half away, right? We're at the end of July right now. And so in September, the new WarioWare game comes out. I know you can play WarioWare like between the raindrops of, this a storm that is another big game. But then in October, Metroid Dread comes out, where it's like, okay, like I don't. We are coming up again on a time where like Nintendo is releasing big games that we're gonna want to spend a lot of time with. So when we get to play these like little games or catch up on stuff, I don't know, Mark. I don't know.
I don't know, Patrick, either. I wish I had an answer. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I am determined to have it all. This is my year for playing video games.
I believe that.
And then tomorrow, July 28th, we're getting 3 new games for the SNES Switch Online. We're getting Claymates, Jelly Boy, and Bomboozle. 3 games that I am not familiar with.
Yeah, me neither. I've heard of Claymates before, but mostly because whenever I saw it like in the store to rent it back in the 90s, I always had a flash where I thought it was Clay Fighter, which is a game that I liked at the time. And I am just as disappointed now that of what I'm seeing isn't Clay Fighter.
Yeah, let me read the description for Claymates. Take on the role of Clayton, son of Professor Putty. Your father has made a breakthrough, and with the serum he's created, living creatures can be turned into clay. You will face many dangers, but you have the ability to transform into 5 different animals. You'll need all of them. You need them all to run, jump, fly, swim, and climb your way past the obstacles in your path. That doesn't sound bad.
No, that sounds okay. It sounds a little bit like you are both the boy and his blob, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The next one is Jelly Boy. This one, if you are from the US, don't blame me for not hearing about it. I certainly hadn't, because it was originally released exclusively in Europe in 1995. Here's the blurb for it. You are Jelly Boy, candy given the spark of life by the power of lightning. Very gooigi. Very gooigi.
Very gooigi.
You've come to life knowing one thing. You have to escape the candy factory. Fair.
Sure.
To get out, you'll need to collect puzzle pieces and survive the enemy heavies trying to stop you. You're sure to need all your wits, skills, and shape-changing powers to make it through this wacky adventure. Doesn't sound bad.
Yeah, sounds all right.
And then last one, Bomboozle. Strategically detonate every bomb in each level while leaving yourself a safe place to stand when the dust settles. In this puzzle game, you'll have to be quick because time is short. Just make sure you remember to take the size of each explosion into account, or it could blow a hole in all your careful planning. Good luck and have a blast. I'm kind of
Now
into
that's
this.
I don't know. That last one sounds like Budget Bomberman to me.
I continue to be a little bit like sure, we all want, to hear the hits every time a new
Right.
game for NES Switch Online or NES Switch Online is announced. But I am also think it's kind of fun that they are finding these, more obscure library titles and putting them out there for people to play. I feel like a lot of people or everybody like wants video game preservation in some form or
Right.
another, but when these kind of more obscure games are brought out, it's not as exciting as if like Chrono Trigger was put on the system. And believe me, I want Chrono Trigger on the SNES Switch Online, but I think it's kind of cool that Jelly Boy, this game that was exclusive to Europe, sure, like I may never play it, but there will be people who play it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that these three games were announced like in a video that Nintendo of America didn't even like tweet
Stealth.
it out.
No,
Yeah,
stealth announce.
it's total stealth announcement. Like they know what they've got, right? They know that they're putting out the sort of like super deep cuts, and like to your point, like the preservation angle of it is interesting. But yeah, like when you see Paul McCartney, like every Wings song he plays is a Beatles song he doesn't, right? And sure, you want to hear Jet, you want to hear Live and Let Die. But then the rest of it, like, come on, Band on the Run, also fine, you want to hear that too.
And then on Thursday, July 29th, Blaster Master Zero 3 is released on Switch. This one is interesting to me only because the original Blaster Master Zero remake by Inti Creates was it was an early Switch eShop release that at the
Yes.
time, a remake of an NES game had, I won't say hype, but there was a lot of discussion around it. And so interesting to see that has continued into a trilogy, and this is supposedly completes the character's story. So Blaster Master Zero 3 is released on July 29th.
Concluding the epic journey that the Blaster Master has been on.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean I played a couple hours of the first one and did enjoy it. I think it's interesting that Inti Creates have like carved out this kind of niche of just making franchises out of like rebirths or like side projects of other series. Like there's Blaster Master here, and then there's help me out with the name of it, the Castlevania like.
Oh yeah. Bloodstained.
Bloodstained, that's right. They did the 8-bit versions and like did a sequel to it. So it's cool that they can seemingly execute on like the good version of a retro game, and not in like a kick the door down and like change like not in a Shovel Knight kind of way, but in a perfectly serviceable, a fun couple nights experience. Yeah, it's cool to see them do that, and I would be happy to let them do it forever.
Yeah, totally. They definitely carved out a niche in doing like Azure Striker Gunvolt, or right, like basically for a long time running with that Mega Man type gameplay. And yeah, it's cool to see them kind of thrive in that space.
They didn't also make 20XX, right? That was an even smaller indie studio.
I think so.
But even still, all of that, I love that the past is not gone. That we can continue to play games like we played on the NES and SNES kind of forever. So that's we can also resurface the archaic weird stuff that we've never played before. All right, those are the new releases. Let's close this segment out. That brings us to a regular segment on our show. It is time for 433. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, wherein a performer or group of performers didn't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. So, for the duration of one performance of 433, Mark and I will talk about something not at all Nintendo related, thus fulfilling the contract of the piece. Mark, we got in an email today from Jason. He tipped us off to a news story that we're going to be talking about shortly, but he also had a request. Why not discuss the In the Heights movie if we've both seen it? Mark, have you seen the In the Heights movie?
Yes, yeah.
And how do you feel about it?
I really liked it. I had you seen the stage version? It was basically new to me.
Yeah, no, it was totally new to me. I know I have heard some of the songs, but I feel like with all Lin-Manuel Miranda stuff, if I don't like sit down and like listen to it, it's all gonna just like pass, just cleanly through my ears, and it'll make no impression. Yeah, it felt totally fresh to me too.
Yeah, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy musicals, and I like the emotion and like the bombastic nature of musicals. And
Yeah,
so I really enjoyed this. Here's what I think it shares with like Phantom of the Opera is that the plot doesn't really make sense or like mean anything or hold together. Like
right. Or matter.
or matter. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like the plot is not very strong, but the emotions of the individual moments and songs are mostly powerful enough that you're like, yes, you walk out being like, I enjoyed that. What happened in it, I don't know that it matters, but
Right.
like but I was moved by it. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a little bit of that, just like watching it for the spectacle kind of thing, right? Um, and it's such an interesting flick, um, because like I feel like there's a long time where the locations are being filmed with like higher priority than the actors and the performances, um, and like it can be cool and like gives it, it makes sense. It's thematically appropriate that you try to shove the setting forward as a character as much as possible. But then there are also times where there's the sequence at the pool where like there's some really bizarre green screening going on where you're like, but you were so dedicated to like showing me the space and now it looks fake. But then also my favorite song in the whole show was where they're dancing on the side of the building.
Oh, uh-huh.
And that's
Yeah.
obviously, CG and fake, but I don't know, it really worked for me, and I liked it a lot.
It has been like I watched it when it came out, and so it has been long enough now that I don't really remember the specifics of the name of the song. But my favorite number is the one with the old woman,
Oh
where
yeah.
she is talking about like her time in America and like what it was like being a child and growing up and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was really powerful, or just like I thought the performance was really powerful, and I thought the staging of it was really cool and
hmm
inventive.
Well, yeah, and like it did, again, the sort of thing of like really focusing on the location. Like it did like a soft dissolve between her like holding a candle in her apartment and her holding on to like a handrail on the subway, which are all like that does such a good job of selling the space, which is obviously such an important part of that journey. Can I tell you something that I didn't care for? And that is Lin-Manuel Miranda as the Piragua
Hated
guy.
it. Hated it.
It's too destroy. Lin, we know who you are. Like the second you're in the movie, it feels like we were having a cool sleepover and Dad came
Yeah,
down.
I hated it. I hated it. I hated how strongly, like how prominently he was featured. It was funny to me having mostly listened to like Moana and Hamilton from Lin
Yeah,
Manuel Miranda, right? And the musicality in the Heights was so
that's the
similar.
applause, but keep going.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm just gonna say, like, In the Heights sounds so much like Hamilton to me. Like, the music,
Yeah.
the like lyricism, like it. Yeah, very, very Hamilton.
Yeah, and that is also fine because like you put a couple Sondheim musicals up next to each other, and if Into the Woods or Company isn't in there, I'm not gonna be able to tell you which one is which. So like it's fine. All right, that's what we thought about In the Heights. We were accompanied today by pianist Kyle Shaw. All right, Mark, let's get into the news.
So as part of the release of Skyward Sword HD, Nintendo also released a really cool looking set of Joy-Cons. Friend of the show, previous guest Matt Acevedo sent us pictures of the Joy-Cons that he got, and it is a cool looking set.
Yeah, especially put together with the amiibo and Skyward Sword on the screen itself. It is a handsome little bundle. Mark, you threw that away. You had
I
one of
did.
those. You had them pre-ordered.
I know, and believe me, when he sent that photo, it was like a dagger. I mean, a happy
Yeah.
dagger. I'm very happy for him and his new Joy-Con, but it it was definitely like, ooh, that could have been me. But it's not. Also not me. Twitter user Mario RPG fan noticed that inside their new Skyward Sword HD Joy-Con, there are two thin strips of material above and below the thumbstick opening. There are conflicting reports on if the material has appeared in earlier Joy-Con releases, but it seems like it's fairly new, and if it has been happening, it hasn't been happening for long. So this led to speculation that the revision is intended to fix Joy-Con drift, or at least prevent it for a little bit. Because one thing that some fans have been doing is opening up their Joy-Con and basically putting like little strips of cardboard in the same location to try to like apply pressure to the analog stick like nub to kind of keep it in place.
Yeah, and you can apply that same pressure if like you're doing the screen where you can like test, where it's like sensing the position of like the resting of the Joy-Con. If you apply pressure like above and to the left and the right and below the thumbstick, you'll see that it like sort of automatically centers itself. So it does seem like a little extra pressure in the right points fixes Joy-Con drift either permanently or temporarily. It is not clear, especially because like Joy-Con drift wasn't an immediate issue when it took a couple weeks and months for it to be really revealed as a persistent and prevalent problem for the Joy-Cons in the first place. So is this is this a fix? B, is it a permanent fix? And C, does anyone know? Does Nintendo even know?
Right. And seemingly we'll never know, right? Because it could be that if Nintendo deliberately started adding this for that purpose, they're never going to say that. They're never going to admit that is the case. It may not fix it all of the time, even if that is the intention, and we probably won't know for a while, right? Because it's not like every pair of Joy-Con drifts, and the time that it can take to happen. Like for my first set of Joy-Con, I guess actually it was like a year after I bought them that I started like experiencing Joy-Con drift. So, but interesting nonetheless. It will be interesting to see if the Joy-Con that come with the Switch OLED model also have this, because it didn't happen by accident, but what the intention is, we'll just never really know.
Yeah, which is, I mean, like it's understandable, right? Like there's a ongoing lawsuit around Joy-Con drift and all of that. But even if they could have acknowledged it, if Nintendo could have said, starting today, it's an improved Joy-Con that has less of a likelihood of suffering from drift, like that'd be like a marketing beat, and one they could never pursue, but one that fans would respond to.
Yeah, and I mean, really nothing stopping them other than just they've never really wanted to admit the Joy-Con drift was a real problem anyways, right?
Yeah.
So, but interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see moving forward if that just continues to be like part of Joy-Con from now on.
Yep.
According to a new report in Variety, Netflix is developing a live-action Pokemon television series developed by the showrunner of Lucifer, Joe Henderson. Netflix has kind of become the home of Pokemon streaming in the US recently, as it currently hosts the animated series. I think that this is weird that it has leaked, and I wonder if the fact that this is leaked will kill it, like the purported Zelda and Star Fox series that were in development with the Netflix a few years ago. Or I guess actually Zelda was in development at Netflix, reportedly.
The Star Fox was a Funny or Die thing, right?
Yeah, it was a Funny or Die thing, and then both got canceled around the same time. supposedly because the Zelda one leaked. So I wonder if like the fact that this is coming out is somebody trying to kill it, or if the Pokemon company is far enough removed from Nintendo proper that something like this wouldn't make a difference.
I think both that and the Pokemon Company is so much more in the like movie and TV entertainment world, right? Like, Nintendo is still skittish around that, partially because they've not had that many experiences, and most of their experiences, turn out crap, right? Like, there hasn't been a good Nintendo movie or TV show, and like you can argue that there has been good arguably that's what made Pokemon popular is the TV show, right? And Detective Pikachu was a big deal just a couple years ago. So like, going down the try to do live action with CG monsters, like that is a different aesthetic for Pokemon, but I think it's one that works, and especially works for audiences in the States. Like, I think that's something that, you know adult nerds want to see. Um, ourselves included, right? Like, we enjoyed Detective Pikachu, okay, um, but yeah, it's I hope I don't think that this is going to kill it, like the word of it getting out, and I hope it's good. I hope people enjoy it. But I don't know. I've got a little bit of a I don't really look forward to anything on Netflix anymore.
Yeah, totally.
Feel like
Yeah,
I've been burned
I
too
agree.
many times.
Yeah, I definitely have Netflix fatigue a little bit where with their scripted series where it's like I don't think it's going to be great, but it'll hopefully be like good enough. Um
Hmm.
but I'm curious to see what this turns out to be.
Yeah, me too. It is it's funny, like, just thinking about like the streaming shows. I apologize for a bit of a tangent here, but the streaming shows that like we've been watching recently, either like on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, that you can see like the effects of filming during COVID on them, or at least I think I can. Like, not a lot of people in the same shot, a lot of green screen use, whatever. Um, and like that was so stark for me watching Loki and then going to see Black Widow in the theater and being like, "Oh, this was a movie that they filmed in a space with actors, and they were all together." My point being, as we start moving back, maybe, hopefully, to filming things in real locations with actors in the same space, that like everything will just start to feel more like exciting and vital like that, which will even apply to something like Pokemon, which has so many CG characters in it.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of leaks, after a few quiet months where we weren't getting a ton out of the Gigaleak that happened, was it last year?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. If you don't recall, Nintendo and Nintendo's partners were hacked last year, and there were like terabytes or whatever of data that were downloaded from them. So a lot of stuff has been coming out. It kind of happens in spurts, it seems like. And most recently, the most recent leaks included some interesting stuff around the Wii and DS time. So, as part of it, over 100 potential names for the Wii were released. And it's basically just like an Excel doc. It looks like the names are in Japanese and then translated almost verbatim into English. It was posted by Resetera forum user Mondo Mega, and some of the names are kind of like are pretty interesting, including like Famicom Happy, Every Nintendo, Jet Nintendo, Nintendo Resort, Nintendo Aqua, Nintendo Air, Nintendo All Stars, Nintendo Earth, Nintendo Eternal, a Nintendo Everyone. Um, yeah, so that it's kind of an interesting behind the scene look at. I
Yeah.
mean, Wii is not even on this entry, so who knows when it's from? But a behind the scenes look on, like what like new Nintendo GameCube, next Nintendo, just like all the names that must get thrown out as they're working their way to the final product.
Yeah, that's so cool. I hope someday we get back to just calling whatever Nintendo is putting out either Famicom or just the Nintendo.
Do you remember so around before the release of the Wii U, there were or the reveal at E3, there were tons of rumors about what this Project Cafe was going to be. And one of the big rumors was that they were just going to call it Nintendo Entertainment System again. Like going
It'd be
like a
perfect.
gritty reboot of
Yeah,
the original.
just Dread.
Also, as part of this leak, there were some DS games that were in some form of development. It's not specified exactly like how far it made it into development or whether it was just purely like a presentation or a pitch. But some of these I thought were interesting. Um, Pokemon Pinball is listed as a DS title. Geist DS is listed that, and also for including online play. That I kind of wish we lived in a world where Geist was like an ongoing Nintendo series and not just kind of like a strange fever dream that happened on the GameCube. There's a game that's codenamed Plucker, developed by a company called Nightlight. It's a proposal from Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering. So kind of like listed, described here again by Mondo Mega as a strategy game that replaces card games with figures.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, a little bit like Skylanders or those Toys to Life type thing before its time. The notes for New Super Mario Brothers specifically mention plans to distribute new levels through Wi-Fi after the fact, which would have been pretty cool. And then some details on some Wii titles. So Project Hammer, the ill-fated Project Hammer, is listed as
Yes.
Hammerman, and the notes say, quote, aiming to create a Dynasty Warriors type game that will sell in North America. Eee. There is Sphere. It's an unreleased end space game, and it's mentioned it features a female spy, infiltration action, Metal Gear like switching between multiple remote cameras. There's a Metroid game developed by Intelligent Systems. We have seen some concept art from this previously. Project X from Retro Studios, which is an action game featuring Sheik from Ocarina of Time. Again, I feel like some art from this has leaked out, or
Yeah,
we've like seen it from a portfolio in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Revo R by HAL. It's a racing game aiming for pop art style graphics. And then finally, Dance Dance Revolution Mario 2 for Wii. That would be developed by Konami. And that, of course, I think is a missed opportunity for friend of the show and previous guest Rachel Chapman. That would have been one for her.
Totally. I mean, it's always like fun and exciting to see these leaked games that never came to fruition. But like, you just know, like there has to the graveyards of unreleased games just stretch on for miles and miles around every developer. But I feel like Nintendo has such this like level of like quality or like also just the general like rabbity nature of like they're gonna see something and get spooked and then we're never gonna see Project X out of Retro Studios that like for every leak that we do see there's like 100 more that games that we will never even get a whiff of.
I know the mind reels. Like I don't think I could handle it if I knew. Like as a fan, like I think I would die of joy if I just knew every project that Nintendo had worked on and abandoned at some point. Like that
Yeah.
information, it would just fry my brain in the best way possible, right? It'd be like looking at the Ark of the Covenant.
I mean, you want to think about like the video game equivalent of the Ark of the Covenant. Can you imagine if you had access to every game that was ever pitched to Nintendo? Like any studio or developer that was like that Nintendo was like, yeah, what would you do with whatever property? And just seeing those pitches, I feel like it would melt my brain.
Yeah, the playable prototypes, the
Oh yeah,
oh, the
concept
vertical
art.
slices,
Yes.
just heaven. I want to dive into it like a ball pit at McDonald's.
Please don't dive into those. They're very bad.
Okay, so let's talk about the Steam Deck. I don't know entirely what there is to say about it, other than Steam has revealed, or Valve has revealed, a new piece of hardware that they started taking pre-orders on that will be released in December. And it is very similar. It's like Valve's take on a Switch, essentially, catering more to the audience that is already playing games on PC or on Steam.
Yeah, and like in some ways it is just a beefier version of the Switch, both in terms of tech specs and physically. It looks like it is a bigger machine, a bulkier machine. Um, and so like there are some ways where this uh feels like a very good product, right? Where it's like, oh yes, I would like to play Witcher 3 at its highest fidelity on a handheld system. Ooh, yes, I would like to play Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order on a handheld. I would not like to be locked out of these games where developers have said, no, we don't want to pay the Switch tax and like figure out how to make our games run on inferior hardware. But it's always going to lack Nintendo software, which has been the thing that has kept Nintendo handhelds and consoles not just alive, but thriving for, 35 years. So, it seems like a cool piece of kit. But I would almost rather just have either a high end PC or PlayStation 5 or Xbox One X Series X, Xbox Series X, I guess is the name of that system, and leave the like handheld experiences to the Nintendo things or the games that'll play nice on Nintendo hardware.
Yeah, I feel like there is a real opportunity in this space, right? Because one
Yeah,
of the killer features of the Switch is, oh my gosh, I can take these full console games, and it's
right.
also a handheld. It's interesting to me that this Steam Deck, I think, doesn't do the like docking part of it. It is a
No,
dedicated
it does.
handheld. Oh, okay,
It
got it.
does. It does. And I don't know if there are actual docks or just like an HDMI
You just
out,
plug it
but
in.
like you can just plug it in. Which is also something that I wish the Switch would do. Like it would be nice to hook it up without having to run it through the dock. Um, but what are you gonna do?
I don't think you do. You have to run it through the dock? Like you can't do a USB-C to HDMI. I
USB
don't
C
even
to
know if that's a
HDMI?
thing.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think it requires the dock to do that. And I think the Steam Deck doesn't require a dock, although they are selling docks for it as well. It is it's an interesting thing too when like in some ways it's not too different from like having a laptop and playing like Xbox games with like Xbox Game Pass on your PC, or using remote play with like your iPhone or a Vita or whatever for your PlayStation 5. So like I don't know, there are so many ways to approximate the Switch experience. um and like I think one of the reasons that the Switch is so like attractive in the way it does that is that it is like a zero friction experience, right? Like you just drop it into the dock and like you're playing it there. You take it out, you can pull the controllers off and be playing multiplayer instantly. This thing doesn't have removable controllers on it. It's easy to pair other like Bluetooth controllers, but like it's still not the same as having it all sort of like in the box ready to go the second you open it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the value proposition of being able to take pretty much any game and having it be portable, that's huge, right? That's one of
Yeah.
the undeniable appeals of the Switch. I have to say, my eyes kind of rolled out of my head from rolling them too hard when I read Gabe Newell's quote, where he says, let me put it this way. If you're a gamer and you pick up a Switch and you pick up one of these, meaning the Steam Deck, you're going to know which one is right for you, right? And you're going to know it within 10 seconds. And the kind of like gaming is for men, like
Yeah.
machismo in that quote kind of
It sucks a little.
makes me want to die a little bit. But yeah. But yeah, I
I
think
mean, yeah.
I think there's room for it. Like I think that the Steam Deck, if it is a good piece of hardware and works how they are saying it's going to work, like could be enormously successful, because I think people want that flexibility to being able to take their games portably.
Mark, I don't know if I've been saying it for a while, but I've been thinking it for a long time. That it is a shame that Valve has never put Portal 2 on Switch. I believe we've talked about it at least once on this show. But this feels like the final nail in the coffin if Valve is releasing hardware to compete with the Switch, and Gabe Newell is like, one of these is for babies and the other one isn't. It seems like Portal 2 is never going to come to Switch.
One of these are for man hands.
Which you and I have said multiple times on this show that we have enormous man hands. So, I mean,
maybe it's for us. Was
maybe
the Xbox Duke not big enough for you? Finally, Patrick, you and I have Metroid Dread fever. And really, the only cure is going to be the release of Metroid Dread when we get our grubby little hands on it, our grubby little man hands in October. But as if just trying to stoke our fevers even higher, GameStop has revealed an exclusive pre-order bonus, which is a pin set. You get a pin of Metroid in like an action pose. You get a pin of
you said
Emmy,
of Metroid of Samus
of Samus. Yeah. Why can't Metroid crawl? You get a pin of Samus in like an action pose, and then Emmy like looking like it's about to dunk a basketball or something. Like, I feel like maybe it was the pandemic, maybe it was the Mario 35, but I've got a little bit of like an itch for pins now. I'm just like,
oh no,
want to collect these pins.
Mark, have you already pre-ordered a copy of Metroid Dread?
No, I'm trying not to pre-order stuff anymore because if it's not like exclusive or it's not going to be rare, there's no real point to do it. I feel like I got burned with Outer Worlds from last summer when that released on Switch, and I ended up having a good time with it, but like I had committed to buying this game and the reviews were not that great, and had I waited, I probably would have waited until a patch or it went on sale or something like that. And so like I believe that Metroid Dread is going to be a high quality game, but I don't feel the need necessarily to pre-order it, which is why why they're doing this pin set for people like me that are on the fence.
Money. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, GameStop, I already have a copy of this game pre-ordered it's the collector's edition. So I'm already in for like $90.
Did you get it? Did you pre-order from GameStop?
I don't remember. I think I ended up grabbing one from Best Buy.
Oh,
if memory serves me. But maybe it is a GameStop reservation. And does this say that I get this with the collector's edition?
I don't know. I bet you could sweet talk your way into it though.
But then I've got to talk to someone from GameStop. All right, Mark, let's get out of the news. Okay, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter or any old place that you can share something, like attached to a bird's cage. So that bird will read what they see and squawk about it to its bird friends. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo, and our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of 8-Bit Betty's music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.
My name is Will Hines, and I am a ghostwriter, meaning I write other people's books for them. And I have a podcast called I Will Write Your Book, which are recordings of my meetings with my eccentric clients, such as a woman blocked after one sentence of a children's book about her dogs, a romance novelist who dislikes sex, and a man proud of having sampled everything in his local grocery store. This podcast has been described as fully improvised, played by some of the best comedians on the planet Earth. Hey, that's pretty good. That's I Will Write Your Book on Campfire Media.
Campfire.